Hello and welcome to another discussion in the SF Masterworks reading group. We work our way through the SF Masterworks in the order they were published as Masterworks. We're currently on Man Plus by Frederik Pohl, which is the 29th book in the series. So we're crawling our way through this. For if you'd like to join us for these discussions, we do one book every month, and the books coming up for March will be A Case of Conscience by James Blish, who is a repeat author, The Centauri Device by M. John Harrison, who is not. We'll be reading a John Harrison book for the first time. And then the repeat author, the most repeated of the repeat authors, Philip K. Dick, Dr. Blood Money for March, April, May. So if you'd like to join us for any of these, either here in the chat or in the forum for just typed out chats, please check out the Patreon forum. That's where we do all our planning. With me, of course, we have the usual group of friends. Jared, could you kick off the introductions, please?
Sure. I'm Jared. I run the Fantasy Thinker YouTube channel, and also on the Speculative Speculation podcast and the Film Chewing podcast, Oscar Project, and the weekly pulls for panel chewing on page chewing as well.
Quite a list, Layla.
Yeah, stumbled through it.
I'm Layla Goshi. I'm a writer, poet. I edit Validity magazine, and I read science fiction.
Nice. And Susanna.
I'm Susanna Imaginariu. I'm the author of Timelessness, and I also read science fiction.
We all do.
Yeah.
All right.
A lot.
So,
A lot.
It's pretty much all I read now.
yeah. So Man Plus, let's go around, do high level thoughts, and then we'll get into the weeds of the book. Let's go about the other way now. Susanna, do you want to start?
Well, okay. I loved it. I was not prepared for this book, and well, it had a slow start. Okay, let's start why I loved it. The very idea of it, it started almost like one of those 80s, pulp films, just body horror. I had no idea what was going on, but there was one thing that kept nagging at me, was the narrator. The choice of narrator was omniscient and referred to itself as we. And I mean, I should have seen it coming, because when we read Gateway by the same author, the ending was quite a punch in the gut. And when we finally realized what was going on, no one was expecting, and it was, I thought it was quite impressive, even though it was right there on the cover, right? But it was still a surprise. This book for me was almost the equivalent of like the first time I watched Saw, the film, which to this day, I don't know, it completely caught me off guard, because I love puzzles. I don't know if anyone saw the movie and don't want to spoil it, but the ending is quite unexpected, or it was for me. And I could almost hear the music while I was reading this and got to the last chapter. And finally you understand who the narrator was, because that was nagging me all the way throughout. But then I forgot. I just got involved into the story, because you just get caught up in the madness of it. And I completely, I let go. I thought it was just a gimmick and just went with it. And then that last chapter, wow. And then the last sentence, just to add that little extra. So I thought that was brilliant. And I don't want to spoil it, because everyone read it. Other things that I liked, which actually have nothing to do with the book itself, But did you notice that it was set in 2026, in this year?
Oh,
Coincidence. Because when the president is musing about his obituary, so then we see the date that he was born and then we would die with 2026. And he got a lot of the stuff right, like the population, the Earth population is nearly 8 billion. We are almost there. So it's, I thought that was actually great. And the
That's
thing
cool.
that didn't match, or so I was telling my husband right at the beginning when he asked, how is it going? Oh, it's okay. We're very optimistic about, the medical advancements that would have, but he completely missed how computers would evolve because they were still the size of rooms. I've made that comment. Which, yeah, right. I was fooled in a way. So he even got that one right. But the medicine was through the roof. Well, technology didn't seem that quite advanced. And then we learned a few things. But I thought that was genius because he foresaw so many things, and the timing was perfect to read it. So maybe I wouldn't have enjoyed it as much if I read it, 5 years ago or 5 years from now. But I think it really hit the spot. So great.
Yeah, I had a similar impression. My high level, view is that, I I think it's great in terms of how he touched on things that we're now right in the thick of. So there's a little bit of future thinking happening from the biotech to computer artificial intelligence, just all of that, and even some he touched on like things about the media, how the media represents things. I thought that was really interesting. I enjoyed that. So overall, I'd say I'm 99% masterwork, and I have a 1% question about it, which I think once we get into it, it'll make more sense. So,
yeah. Well, my high level thoughts were. I was, I was, I was bored by this book. I don't know what it was, and I liked Pohl's previous work, Gateway. I really enjoyed Gateway. So maybe I had too high expectations when I went into it, but because basically the story is we build cyborg, we put him on Mars, and that was what it was to me. And there was a lot of people standing around talking about how they're building the cyborg, and it didn't interest me that much. And I don't know if it was because it was the I don't if this is considered hard science, hard science fiction or what have you, because I don't know how accurate any of this stuff is at all, but it felt that way. It felt like I was watching a lot of medical procedure and a lot of people talking about it around the body, and it really just it really seemed to not jive with me that much. There were a lot of interesting points. I love, like Susanna, you pointed out the we thing. I thought that was cool. I did like that, and I did like how that came out at the end as well, and how there was little hints of that all throughout the narrative. That was pretty cool. And I did like the last 20 pages or so. I thought those were pretty exciting and pretty informative, as far as how the rest of it went. But there was so much building the better mousetrap going throughout the whole book that just didn't ring with me. And maybe, like you said, Suzanne, if I read this 5 years from now, I like it better, or 5 years ago, I would like it better as well. But maybe it was a timing thing. But But that's just how it rang with me now. And there was I have a few things marked out that we'll get into and talk about as we go on here.
Yeah, more than human was that boring book for me. So this one, unless it was a lot more boring, had a good chance of being liked for me. And I think for the most part, like I wavered between I can we get to the point already to oh this is fun. I'd like to hear more. I think once he got on Mars, it was very interesting, especially with the introduction of this possibility that maybe something's up with the survey results that have been telling us that it's essential to put a man on Mars. And uh, yeah, and that made the rest of the book really come together for me. Even the parts that I sort of slogged through a little bit, I think I saw their point and I appreciated them for it. So the ending really brought together the book for me. That doesn't happen very often, but it did. So I think, yeah, overall I didn't enjoy the reading of the book as much as I enjoyed how much I liked it at the end once it all came together and we got that big reveal at the end. So yeah, and I think this was a good book for me.
Yeah.
I had to read it very slowly. It took me over a week to read because I could tell that there was a lot going on. There was a lot of misdirection and distraction, and also I don't know if it's a bit of maybe it's masochist or not, but I was really into the whole body horror aspect of it and how optimistic they were with certain procedures, like the first cyborg. It's just yeah, you'll get your eyes back and your skin back and your lung, and they will be blue, your eyes will be blue. That's very optimistic.
Yeah.
Just very optimistic, and you could see that something was going wrong, but the book was only at the beginning, and then suddenly, yeah, everything crashes, and then we start over. But I couldn't help wondering, like, because he got so many things right, like the descriptions of Mars. Like, why on earth would you want to go to Mars? It's just, and now it's all the talk. We live in this era where it's all about going to Mars. Apparently, good thing that now they are thinking of making a little stop on the moon first, which makes sense. But Mars really does not appeal personally. I don't think there's a lot of future there, and the way that it's described here, I don't know how accurate it is, but I guess it is pretty accurate in the essential stuff. It's brutal, I'm not saying that we won't get there eventually. Of course we will, but will it be worth it? I don't know. I wouldn't want to live on Mars anyway. But the idea that we have to adapt the human body to actually live there made sense, and we don't have, I don't think, the technology to create a cyborg yet. And I wonder if it is because of all the restrictions, humanitarian restrictions that we have in place. I wonder if doctors and scientists had free rein to experiment on humans, if this could actually become a reality. So, because technology evolved because there was much fewer restrictions, of course. But yeah, there was something that I was thinking about throughout the book. What if, maybe it wouldn't be that far-fetched?
Yeah.
And what would be the consequences of it, which is explored here. So that's why I enjoyed it.
I want to come back to the narrator issue, which, Jared, I wonder if this is what impacted you, because it was written in a, kind of objective, but kind of wry tone, sort of this, and now we have, HeartNet, and this is happening to HeartNet. And only in hindsight do we realize why the tone is that way.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
why the narrator has that
He was
tone.
driving me crazy, man.
Yeah, right. And you
Yeah.
know, and I kind of really interpreted that as at first, because to me some of these 50s, 60s, 70s novels kind of take that tone. I don't know. I don't know why, but this one especially so. So I think that might be one aspect of the book that at first can be maybe a turnoff. But I did keep reading because of the, you know, well, first I wanted to read it for this discussion, but I yeah, the all the changes that the human body had to go through. I did see that, yes, as horror. And about two-thirds into the book, I started thinking, you know, why don't they just build a robot? Why, you know, what is the, in terms of the story, what is this underlying drive to put a brain, essentially put a brain in a bunch of metal and walk it around on Mars? Because that's essentially where they were at, you know, except for some, I guess, a brain and a torso, you know. And I still don't feel like the book really answered that question, even though, well, it answers the question in terms of who we is and in terms of who the narrator is. But I really didn't get the sense of why are these humans doing this? You know, why isn't there a critical thinker who can say, okay, we can do all this. Why don't we just build a robot and send it to Mars? You know, which is really what we probably will end up doing now. I don't know if you saw those Chinese robots, you know, the other day. Did anyone see the Chinese New Year exhibition?
Mm.
Anyway, there are some fantastically agile robots right now. And when I saw those, I thought those are the things that'll probably get sent to Mars someday. But anyway, in terms of the book, that it reached a point to me where I started asking, you know, what is the logic of this? I'm not sure if I really got the answer, but at the same time, with everything else that is in the book, I still see it as a masterwork. You know, it's kind of like, to me, Parable of the Sower, how that kind of predicted some scenarios, you know, that are coming to fruition now. And this book does that too, ultimately. So, but that's my big question. At what point could they have just said, we've basically torn this guy to pieces, why don't we just build a robot and have done with it?
Yeah.
You know?
I think
So,
part of it might be because it was written in 76 and or 74, and I think there was something about keeping that human perspective to these kind of exploration things that just a robot just wouldn't be enough. It wouldn't have that direct experience, and so, and of course a human wouldn't survive the way that they built a cyborg to survive. So I think it has something to do with that like now we might consider robots to be enough, and we would get enough information from the inputs of whatever robot we put on a planet. But I don't think that was something that was as evident in the in the mid '70s.
Yeah.
Uh, I, I,
Maybe.
I, I, I disagree. I think it's also to do with human nature. I mean, we already have robots on Mars. You know, we have
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
the probes. You know, that wouldn't be an achievement. You know, humanity wants to be on Mars.
Yeah.
Even in the book, the idea was not exploration, was colonization. So it has to be a woman, otherwise it doesn't count, right?
Yeah. That's what I meant. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, the idea. So
Yep.
they did what they thought would be necessary. And I don't know if this was possible. Probably there will be plenty of volunteers just to be, you know, the first man on Mars. I
mm.
Sure.
can see that happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the reason they were putting the man on Mars was supposedly because there's going to be a war that kills all of them, and this president wanted his name in history as the one who ensured the survival of the human race, and so they needed to put a human, no matter how skewed a version of human it was, on Mars. So I think, yeah, because of their goal to build a colony, like Susanna said, and this ensure survival of the human race, I think those together meant that a robot wouldn't do it.
I think philosophically for the book, it's how much do you let go of what it means to be human
Mm-hmm.
to make that transition.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
that
I
was
could see
exactly
it.
because
Yeah.
he was no
Absolutely.
longer human. Yeah.
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 Yeah. At the end of the first chapters, actually says, that even one that was a monster, they expected a great deal from Roger, even and they refer to him as a monster, and
Mm-hmm.
so they built him beyond, man plus being something beyond man, and they continued to look at him that way, and it was interesting how the the uh, the feelings that everything they were doing to step by step by step was to get him used to being this monster, um,
Mm-hmm.
rather than falling to the foibles of human interaction, in that, and that's how, like, his wife played into it and all that stuff, and so it's yeah, it was interesting from that perspective about going beyond just a human being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there was a lot of Frankenstein
Yeah,
in it. Yeah.
yeah.
What did we think of Brad, the scientist? I thought he was an interesting character and an interesting perspective to see these monsters through, because he's responsible for how they interact with the world, what filters they have for how they interact with the world, and he has this certainty that he's right, and it's almost like he does, like the way he talks to them and the way he thinks about them. It's like he's treating them as not humans who have feelings and who might be affected by the decisions he makes, right? They're just an experiment for him. And I thought that was a very interesting perspective to get throughout the book.
No, he's a sociopath, and he was completely detached from it. But that is explained with his accident and how he lost his eye, etc., etc. His personality. He had his own disconnect with. Well, he had no empathy, pretty much. And but everyone, all of them, even the president, the wife, and John, the moment. What was the name of the first one? Willie and Roger. The moment they kind of became the experiment, it's like they stopped seeing them as human. Even Sully, which kind of became attached to him. She wasn't quite attached to Roger, the man. It was the creation that to some degree. So the moment he became the experiment, that was it. He was the experiment. He was the project, and it was sometimes quite disconcerting to see how they interacted with him. He was just a piece of yeah, crap. No, not crap, but just a robot, just a thing that they were adding pieces on, taking, pulling apart. Just even his perception, yes, like Pashan was saying, was filtered because his new eyes could not take all the information. So, yeah, poor guy.
Yeah, they
But,
always it was always do something and then
Mhm.
apologize after. It was never.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
never ask for permission first. It was always do something, then apologize later. And we couldn't tell you this because of this, and we didn't tell you this because of that. And
I just
so
don't understand why didn't he say no? Like I guess he could have said no, but that would mean because he was this famous astronaut and
right, yeah,
you know, but still they were really mean to it. They lied to him all the way through.
Mhm.
Right.
Yep.
Mhm.
It would be very interesting if this were ever put on film to see an actor play Brad, who is the best friend, but sleeping with his best friend's wife, who happens to be his science experiment. So I did find him to be a very interesting character, and I actually liked that as a character, not approving of his all his decisions. But even with the affair he was having, that was kind of that wasn't necessarily a good versus evil situation because, forgetting the name of uh, who was the second cyborg, Tom?
Roger's the
Roger?
second one.
Roger.
Yeah.
Roger Towaway. Yeah.
Probably,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, totally.
So Roger and Dory had an arrangement that, they did have kind of an open marriage when Roger traveled. So even that is kind of I don't know, kind of a slippery slope. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's all fine until it's the best friend. Yeah.
Right,
Right, yeah.
Mhm.
right.
And he wasn't traveling when they were having their affair.
So, and if they weren't having the affair, Willie wouldn't have died, and he wouldn't have been selected.
Yeah.
The whole
Oh yeah,
thing.
that whole thing, yeah.
Yeah, because they would have got hold of Brad in a timely manner. Is that? Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
And apparently, everybody in Brad's office knew who he was sleeping with because they were all reluctant to let Roger go there and find them in the
He
red-handed.
knew
Yeah.
well that he was in denial. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so,
That whole
shifting.
dynamic.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
No.
just saying that whole dynamic, I
Yeah.
think was
It was
really
messed
well
up.
done.
Yeah, and I love the role that it played later as he was losing his humanity, on how much it played on his mind, and this was both really well done and kind of sad, how easy it was to manipulate him back out of it by giving him someone who just like talked to him nicely and looked a lot like his wife, and so he was able to not quite forget, but put it out of his mind that he had this little nagging thing. Like he needed to do that, and he got away to do it. And then, I mean, he still needed to, take that little escape and go talk to his wife and have it out with her. But I think meanwhile he had a nice little distraction, and eventually, I think she seems to have even overridden the role that his wife had for him in his mind.
Mhm. Well, because he was a man that despite everything and all the modifications, and he was still a man.
Hmm.
And he,
Yeah, that's interesting. And yeah, and I think that's kind of where it was it was an interesting situation to use to sort of get to the knot of how he still stayed human despite all the modifications to him. So that was pretty interesting.
Hmm.
I think, okay, sorry, shifting gears a bit, what did we think of the almost blind faith in the poll results? I felt like the poll and survey results were telling them strange things. Like, you can prevent war if you put a man on Mars. Okay, are we not going to analyze that? We're just going to believe what the computer numbers tell
I
you.
know.
in what world have you been living, Barsha? We do everything the computers tell us and the polls tell us these days. Not far-fetched at all.
I mean, yeah, that's kind of what is scary about that, because we're not trying to analyze the series of events that will lead to this situation. No, sir. The computers tell us that if we do not put a man on Mars, we will go to all-out war, and so we're just gonna have to do that. $7 billion apparently, which is not a small expense.
Especially back then. Yeah.
Drop in the bucket
Yeah.
now, but
Yeah.
but yeah, no, that I did question that. I was just like, oh, and I just chalked it up to maybe this society was a little more advanced than our society right today, where people just believe whatever they want to believe. And um I just chalked it up to maybe these computers until I got a little further and got the whole we thing, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, and then I started to wonder. I was like, okay, what's really going on here? And then but at first I just chalked it up to, well, this is an advanced society. They have better better means of getting information and what have you. Um but I did, yeah, I did question it, because I was just like, so if we don't get a guy on Mars, people on Earth are going to go to war and destroy themselves. And I was like, but it's still one nation racing to put the guy on Mars. Wouldn't it be just either all the other nations are mad at the United States for doing that first, and how would that stop a war? And I had a whole bunch of questions around that, and I was just like, there's some sort of non-logic loop going on here that's not making sense. And then
Yeah.
it's
That was a really good misdirection in the book, because it felt almost like the author was saying, yeah, this is a completely reasonable situation and this is fine. But I think really, I almost feel like it's commentary on the fact that all these questions that we are asking, they did not ask. They just like, okay, the computers tell us to put a man on Mars. Let's do it. Let's, not ask any follow-up questions and just go ahead with it. Which, yeah, I mean, I can totally see that happening, and it's sad.
Yeah, scary.
That's what makes me like this book so much, because I do think he captured, like I said, some of what we're living through now, and whether it was luck or just careful observation of his own time, that's to me what sets it apart as interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting. So
I did enjoy one chapter that woke me up a little bit, was when they switched to Dorothy's kind of perspective, and they got into her thoughts basically about what was going on with Roger, and worrying about how their relationship's going to be a year and a half from now, and um, how she was kind of capitalizing on the fame that came with being this person's wife, and it was actually a decent character moment where you got, because the whole book she's just talked about as an object by Brad and Roger. Basically, she's my wife, and she's my adulteress, and but finally we kind of got her perspective on it all, and we finally got some characterization from her standpoint. And I was like, oh, okay, that's good. I enjoyed seeing that part, and it just gave you a little bit more reasoning about, well, it gave more oomph and emphasis to what happens directly after that, is when Roger suddenly shows up and she screams and stuff like that. It gave a little more impact to that event afterwards, and it also gave it gave us at least a little glimpse into what Roger was trying to hold on to in his mind and his memory later on.
Yeah, I agree, because throughout the book, until we get to that point, she's described, or she comes across as this very vain and selfish woman.
Yeah.
Right. But then we have a glimpse of her perspective when I always forget the names, when they go talk to her at the shop, and she explains that, because Roger wanted her to go see him, and they thought he would do better, and they realized, and she said that, not, that actually she didn't think that would be a good idea. And I agreed, in that situation, if she went to see him, it would fall apart. So she was very much aware of what was going on.
Yeah.
And she kept away for his own good. It wasn't selfishness on her part. It wasn't fear. It wasn't shame. She was, in her own way, trying to do the best. She knew what she had done, but she also knew what he had done to himself, or what had been done to him. The things could never go back to the way they were, no matter what. And she was waiting for him to come to that realization, and she was there when he did.
Yeah.
So we actually got that perspective, which was, I thought it was a nice touch, because no one is seriously that selfish and mean, but that's how she was perceived.
Yeah. Right.
She had described him as being, well, first that she had felt lucky to marry him, but then
she loved him, I think.
Yeah. But then he was so fastidious, like he wouldn't get out of bed to use the restroom after so he wouldn't wake her up, and just how much he cared about being good for her. So that really communicated if she just walked in and saw him as he was, and they're describing monster about the other guy. I thought, it did make sense that she was staying away. Yeah.
One of the sentences I highlight was because she was saying that he was head over heels for her, and what good was the man that is upside down? And I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah.
Great piece of insight. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Paul also took a nice old dig at, I guess, an overly feminist interviewer when she came to talk to the wife, and was just like,
that was funny.
I don't want to hear about the astronaut. I don't want to hear about how you're this wife, and like making all these snarky digs about you've caved to the institution of marriage. Like, okay, shut up, lady. But
I love that, because she's actually everything that they want her to be, but they won't see it because they've come with their own preconceived notions. I mean, she is having an affair. She does have her own business.
Yep.
They never ask about the ceramics. They never, they don't really ask about her.
Yeah.
They just came in with assumptions. And again, I thought that was very true to life about a lot of media things.
Yeah. Color with the lens that you want to see the world through, whereas they might be quite following your idea. It's just not the way you want them to. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And
that was interesting.
Yeah.
And then we got a little bit more into this guy Don Kamen,
the priest,
the preacher, and preacher scientist who went with the
forgot about him.
Went with the mission. The one thing I really loved in this was Pohl's nod to Edgar Rice Burroughs' Mars trilogy. He goes, that was like a big influence on Don to be an astronaut. Don Kamen, and I thought it was pretty cool how he was because that's basically fantasy Mars, right? The Edgar Rice Burroughs stuff, and but I thought it was funny how he really got into it, and he really got into the the egg laying beautiful Martian princesses and stuff like that. And I thought that was funny. I thought that was great that he was really going over that stuff, and you could tell Pohl grew up on that stuff. I mean, you could tell that he has a real reverence for that old pulp fiction, and I thought that was a nice touch.
Yeah. I reckon there were plenty of asides that I missed regarding previous works when he's telling the history of our perception of Mars and how
Yeah.
about the channels and
Yeah. Yeah.
but how I that was all news to me. I thought it was great. I love those little bits of trivia.
And it was interesting. I think he said he wants there to be life on Mars because he wants to bring more lives to his god to save. Which I think the next book is called A Case of Consciousness, which is also about a priest/preacher astronaut. And
Oh yeah.
I wonder if that would be an elaboration of the initial thought process we got here. Different authors, of course, but it's interesting, the idea shared between the two books. Maybe we'll talk about that when we get to that book. But yeah, I think, are we ready to sort of start talking about the ending? I think the lead up to it, the time when Roger goes out, accidentally forgets to close some button, I guess, and so his battery drains, and then the computer takes full control, and he cannot override what the computer is doing to his body. I thought that scene was absolutely brilliant because it was a paralysis of sorts, but it wasn't his body failing him, it was the external machines. Like that scene made me borderline angry because it's like buggy software with too many overrides.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, how can you build this thing? Like, you have the life of a man in your hands. How can you build this without giving him an override to say, no, you made the wrong decision, give me back my controls? And yeah, anyway, that scene was brilliant.
But well, Brad, he came through. If it wasn't for Brad saved the day. So a slight kind of redeemed himself a little bit there. So.
Yeah. He
Yeah,
understood
I did
the
like
message.
I did like the fact that even despite their differences or despite the things that Brad did and that Roger perceived what Brad did and stuff, that they still wanted to work to make this mission work when they got to Mars, when they were there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They had to work together at the end of all of that. And interestingly, we didn't dwell too much on the dynamic they shared because, and I think that was intentional because once they got to Mars, that everything is all about that. Like,
Yeah.
even Roger, he's forgotten about his wife now. He doesn't care anymore about their affair, and they're just now working together to make things happen on Mars, which was very interesting.
Mhm.
And then we got the weed.
We've been skirting about that all discussion.
Oh, so many times. Who the fuck is we? Why are you using we? And at first I thought it was, like kind of an X-Files scenario, that the president was not the one in charge. It was like this group of, whoever watching everything, Big Brother style. But even that didn't make sense, and it was nagging at me. Why did you choose this narrator? Why it was really nagging. And then, like I said, I put it aside, just focused on the story. I completely forgot about it. I was just not paying attention, and yeah, well done. I like when that happens.
Yeah.
I'm caught.
Well, the first time it happened in the book, I thought it was like an editing mistake or something like that. I was like,
Yeah,
what? I'm like, who edited this? Like, what's going on here? And then, as it went on, I was like, all right, there's a purpose here. What's going on? And then, finally, when we got towards the ending, I was just like, oh wow, okay, that makes sense now.
and the last sentence, just
Yeah.
Yeah.
If
That's
we manipulated the humans, who manipulated our stuff?
that's that's kind of like a who watches the Watchmen type of thing.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now I need to know. I mean, it was brilliant to end the book there. And there is a second book. I don't know if it elaborates on that last sentence, but I don't know that I'll be reading it anytime soon unless it's in the SF Masterworks. But
I added to the list, but I don't know if I'm going to
Yeah.
read it. Not anytime soon.
yeah,
Because I really enjoyed this one, and I think trying to explain will probably ruin it. I think
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
just right as it is.
I agree.
And
It's
I want
called
to see the
Mars
movie.
Plus. Yeah,
Please make a proper movie out of it. That'd be great.
that'd be nice. Yeah. So I love that, and I love the way they found it out with. And I mean, I wouldn't have guessed even at that point that it's the computers doing the manipulation when they got this MIT graduate who came and told them, look, when I run it on my computer without connecting it to the network, it gives me a completely different result than what you've been claiming. And every time they go on the network, and we're like, okay, who hacked this to that extent? And there were no clear answers there, and it sort of dropped it before going back to Mars. And I think that's when we got that whole gripping sequence with Roger running out of battery and whatnot. And I almost forgot about it at that point. I'm like, yeah, sure, I cared about it a lot then. That was maybe the most interesting thread for me so far. But now this thing happened to Roger, and now I want to know how he survives all of this. And then we go back and we get that reveal. So that was just like completely brilliantly done. I loved how it all came together. It's not often. I usually most of the times I don't tend to remember endings of books. Like what you mentioned with Gateway, I absolutely do not remember how it ends because we'll have to talk about it after. You have to remind me. But usually like the beginning and the middle, like that's what make it. By then I usually decide that I love a book, and here are the reasons why. So the ending almost never matters, but this one was like really made by the ending for me. So
That's why I put it as a masterwork, because the misdirection was flawless, and the characterization with a few contributions, but everything wrapped very well, and it was a book that kept me engaged throughout. Like I said, I was reading it, I really was paying attention to everything. I was really engrossed in it, and that's rare.
nice.
It's a good sign.
Yeah, it's a good book.
Good book. Glad I read it. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And with this title, I would not go anywhere near it. Like title and the cover, I would be like, no, never mind. No.
Yeah.
So do not judge book by the title or cover.
Yep. Age-old adage. Any other topics before we wrap up?
I moved it up to okay.
Okay. Excellent. That's what we need. I think that's what I went into More Than Human with an and I didn't mark it, but that's what I was going to mark it. And then once the discussion happened, I'm like, everybody else loves it so much.
Pressure every time.
Yeah. So anyway, if that's all, then we will see everybody back in a month with a case of conscience. Did I keep calling it a case of consciousness before? Anyway, it's a case of conscience by James Blish for March, and Centauri Device by M. John Harrison for April, and Dr. Blood Money by Philip K. Dick for May. Please join us for any of those if you're interested. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you soon. Bye.